we've got the augmented limbics, AVR, AVL, and AVF. And then we now have the precordial chest leads. We can record the electrical activity of the heart from any one point on the surface of the body relative to that reference point. Okay? That has nothing to do with EKG interpretation. It's just good to know as you go forward. All right, so today we're going to talk about interpretation of EKGs, okay? And like I told you, don't look for this in a textbook. That series, the sequence up there, is not in a textbook. And if anybody asks you, why do you interpret EKG like that, just tell them, I'm sending you paper. Okay? I'll give you 3 such things. Arrowhead is one of them. When we do critical care, I'll give you 2 other ones. You will not find a reference for them, but they're the best thing that I think will distinguish you as a good graduate. So the first thing, like we said, was the axis of the heart. You already know everything about the axis of the heart. You know, it's a normal axis supposed to be positive in 1 and AVF, right? If it is down in AVF, that's the left, so the left axis. If down in AB in 1, that's the right axis, right? If it is down in both, well, you don't know how it got to where it got, so it's indeterminate, right? Good. So that's the very first thing you're going to determine. Then, but when you're looking for axis, you look at the QRS deflection. Remember that. The axis is looking at the QRS deflection. Well, this is the chest lead. We don't look at the chest lead for QRS deflection for axis, right? We look at limb leads, right? I want you to remember that although we said that when we're looking for axis, the QRS is positive, normal QRS is positive in lead 1 and AVF. That positivity is a relative positivity. You understand that, right? So when I say the QRS is positive in lead 1, it could be anywhere from, say this is lead 1, it could be anywhere from this to this, right? All I'm saying is it's predominantly positive, okay? So don't, if I say this is a positive deflection, don't say, but no, it's positive. So the positivity we're talking about is relative, okay? So it's predominantly positive in 1 and predominantly positive in AVF when the axis is known, okay? Now, before you can make a comment on whether the QRS is predominantly positive or negative anywhere, you have to first of all take a bird's eye view of the entire EKG and look at the QRS voltages. Okay? The QRS voltages, they vary from lead to lead, but they are uniform in every single lead. Extremely important. I'll say that again. The QRS voltages, they vary from lead to lead. So it's not, the voltage is not the same in precordial leads as it is in the limb leads. It's not the same as it is in the standard limb leads as it is in the augmented limb leads. But if you take standard limb lead 1, the QRS should be the same in that particular lead. Okay? If you take V6, the QRS should be the same in V6. Okay? Now, when the QRS voltages vary within a lead, that is not normal. That is what we call electrical alternance. Because the voltages are varying from beat to beat. We call it electrical. I won't spell electrical, but I will spell alternance. Okay? What is electrical alternance? It just means the voltages are alternating between tall and short, tall and short. Right? Why would that happen? Jennifer, why would that happen? Why would the electrical activity of the heart vary? Something is reducing and increasing it?
Yeah, there's like more flow coming in or out.
Okay. You see, all of you are talking, even though you're using the wrong words, but you're making the right gestures. Something, whenever that happens, that means the heart is not fixed. Okay? For instance, when you're driving and somebody's overtaking you, right? And from the back, they're overtaking you and hooting at the same time. What do you hear? Right? Because you hear the sound louder when the car is coming. Now, when the car is going away from you, the sound goes away. The sound is alternating in your ears because the object of that sound is moving past you. Exactly the same thing in the heart. When the heart is not fixed in place, the electrical activity will vary. When will the heart be free, swinging around with every beat?
Effusion.
Pericardial effusion, right? Yeah. So when you see electrical alternance, it means the heart is swinging in a sack of fluid. So when there is fluid in the pericardial space, so much fluid that the movement of the heart set it into this swinging motion, that swinging motion will reflect on the surface as electrical alternance. And you see stuff like this. Look at V1. Look at the voltage of the QRS in this particular way. Look at it here. Look at it here. You see how it's varying? That is abnormal. So that bit-to-bit variation in the QRS amplitude is what is called electrical alternance. It's a sign of pericardial effusion. Okay? I want you to remember that pericardial effusion and pericardial tamponade, they have the same pathophysiology. The only difference is in tamponade, the fluid is so much and the pericardium has reached maximum distension in such a way that the pressure is now positive within the pericardial space and restricting the heart. Okay? So if I say you see electrical alternance in pericardial effusion, you should automatically assume that you probably see it in pericardial tamponade. Right? Right? Okay. Any question?
I'm sorry, you just understand about prayer.
You understand why you get electrical alternance in pericardial effusion?
Yeah, because of the fluid.
Exactly. So it's not because of the fluid, because the fluid is suspending the heart, and in the beating, the heart is swinging. And that is causing the shift in the electrical activity. I'm saying that you will also see it in pericardial tamponade. Tamponade and effusion, they have the very same pathophysiology. The only difference is that in tamponade, the pericardium has been stretched to the maximum, and the pressure within the pericardial cavity is now positive, so that the heart is getting compressed. Okay. That's the difference between tamponade and effusion. Okay. We're good? Okay. So now, when you have ascertained that, the voltage are uniform in every lead, the next thing you want to look at is, that is the only thing you can actually say, okay, let me look at the axis. If there is electrical alternance, you really shouldn't make any comment on the axis. Because it will be crazy. You don't know what it's doing, right? So now you have ascertained that the current voltages are constant across the leads. Now you look for axis deviation. So look at this EKG. Melanie, is there an axis deviation? Where is Melanie?
Right here.
Okay. Is there axis deviation? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Good. Which one?
Indeterminate.
Speak up.
Left.
Left. Good. So there is a left axis deviation. Whenever you see a left axis deviation and the QRS duration is normal, that is what we call a left anterior fascicular block. You remember what the anterior fascicle is, right? It's a division of the left bundle branch, right? Okay, good. So when that anterior fascicle is blocked, you will see left axis deviation with a normal QRS duration. What is the normal duration of the QRS variant? Where is it going? Why are you not talking? Do I need to take your fingerprint? What is the normal QRS duration? You can give it to me in milliseconds or you can give it to me in boxes. I prefer boxes. Three little boxes, right? 3 little boxes. Each little box is 0.04. 3 of them is 0.1, right? So the normal QRS duration is about 3 little boxes. So whenever you see a left axis deviation and you're looking at the QRS and the entire QRS is fitting within half of a big box, that means the QRS duration is normal. Whenever you see that, we call it a left anterior fascicular block. Another name for it is left anterior hemiblock. It's called hemiblock because that means half of the left bundle is gone. You remember that from the AV node you get bundle of Higgs, right? And then from the bundle of Higgs you have right bundle and left bundle. And I told you the left bundle is twice the thickness of the right bundle. Then it divides into anterior and posterior fascicle. So we call left anterior fascicular block a left hemiblock because it's really a block of half of the entire left bundle. Okay? Excellent. And the way you know that is on the EKG, you see a left axis deviation with a normal QRS duration. It's a left anterior fascicular block. Okay? Now,
Dr. Martins.
yes.
As far as like determining which side was, like from just looking at this, that it was like left. Is it just because like most of the QRS waves are negative?
What?
Like because you know what? Let me just ask. How do you determine that if it's left axis deviated?
Normal axis. Normal. In order to determine whether it's left or right, you only need to look at 2 leads.
Mm-hmm.
Lead 1 and ABF.
Okay.
ABF is connected to the left foot.
Mm-hmm.
So I said normal axis is positive in 1 and positive in ABF.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you see it abnormal in ABF, don't get confused. Remember, all you need to remember is ABF is left foot.
Okay.
If it's abnormal in ABF, that means it's a left axis deviation. Okay? If it's abnormal in lead 1, it's a right axis deviation. If it is abnormal in both of them, then it is indeterminate. Okay, so that's how we made that decision.
Gotcha.
Got it?
I got it.
Any other question? Okay. Now, hang. Is there axis deviation here? Good. Which one is it? Right. What is the QRS duration like? It's normal, right? Good. Whenever you see a right axis deviation with normal QRS duration, that is left posterior fascicular block or left posterior hemiblock. Okay? And you see what I was trying to explain to you earlier. In lead 1, yeah, you do have some positive reflection, but it is overall negative, right? And it's normal in area. So this is a right axis with normal QRS duration, so it's a left posterior hemiblock. Right? Good. Any questions? Moving on. So we're still talking about axis. So now we're going to talk about rates. So after axis, so on the axis, what do you need to look for? Look at the QRS deflection. They should vary from lead to lead, but they should be uniform within any one lead. If they are varying within leads from beat to beat, that is electrical alternance. The patient has a brachial acute. Or cardiac tamponade. If you have a left axis or a right axis with a normal QRS duration, you have a hemiblock. Whether it's a posterior hemiblock or an anterior hemiblock depends on which axis deviation you have. If it's a right axis deviation, it's a posterior hemiblock. If it's a left axis deviation you have, it's an anterior hemiblock. Okay. Hemiblocks are also known as fascicular blocks. Okay? Don't worry. All I need, don't even try to memorize anything right now. Just understand it. This semester, all we do here right now is just lay the groundwork. In the summer, I will bury you with EKG. By the time you come out, you will resurrect, you'll be born again. You have all kind of EKG reading in your mind. There will be no EKG you won't be able to interpret. So don't panic. Calm down. Just learn the alphabet now. In summer, you'll be cardiologist. As far as EKG is. So that is, yeah. Oh, it doesn't matter. There is no specific line. You just need to look at the entire QRS duration and make sure that it fits. You look, the best way to do it is look at any strip and look at the beginning and the end of the QRS. If it can fit within half of a big box, that means it's less than 3, because a big box is 3 small boxes. If it can fit nicely within half of the big box, that means it is really normal. But if it's not able to fit within one big box, that means the QRS duration is normal. Okay? Remember we're talking EKG here, right? The squares are sometimes difficult to see. That is why I'm also telling you how to look at it using the big box. Okay? So you can just look at the beginning and the end, see if it is more than the big box. Like, what I normally do is to look for a QRS a complex that begins right on one of the lines of the big boxes, and then look whether it covers, it goes more than half of the box or less than half of the box. Okay? And these are technical details. I don't know if they should be talking to you about this in diagnostics. Yeah, I think that is important. Your folks need to read. I will change my summer EKG classes to EKG lab. I think that's what it is. Okay, any more questions? We're good? Excellent. So that's all about axis, right? Now you talk about rates. How do you determine the heart rates? It's very simple. What is the speed of the EKG wave?
25 millimeters.
Thank you, 25 millimeters per second. So that means it's 5 big bucks a second, right? That means each big box is 0.2 seconds, right? So how many big boxes will there be in a minute? 300 big boxes, right? So there are 2 ways to determine rates on EKG. You can count the number of QRS within 300 boxes, and that will give you the heart rate. But you'll be wasting a lot of EKG paper just to determine the heart rate. So another thing you can do is you can say, okay, you know what, I would just count in 30 large boxes. If you count in 30 large boxes, that means you're counting in 6 seconds. Then you multiply that by 10, and that will give you the rate. Or you can say, well, I don't want to count. 30 large boxes is too many. I'll count 15. When you count 15, that means you are seeing the number of QRS in 3 seconds. So you multiply that with 20. Right? So that's one way to determine the rate. Right? Another way to determine the rate is to look at the number of big boxes within 2 complexes. Right? So if, you understand what I'm saying, right? Determine the number of big boxes in 2 complexes. If there is 1 box between 2 complexes, that means the rate is 300.
Yeah.
If there are 2 boxes
It's 150.
between the complexes, it's 150. If there are 3 boxes, and then you keep going. Right? Good. That is it. That is how we do it. But there are times you really have to choose how you want to do it. So that's an example. You see, the rate here is 50. Why is the rate 50? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 300 divided by 6. That's what that is, right? The rate here is 60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Divided by 300, right? The rate here is 75. It's all the number of big boxes within 2 complexes. And you can see when the complexes are coming after every big box, the rate is 300. All right? So what we normally do in practice is you just start from here and say 300, 150, 75, 60, 55, thereabout. You know what I mean? Usually you just estimate it, okay? But you understand it, right? So you can either do the 300 formula or you just divide the boxes, whatever, you know what I mean? Anybody confused about this? Y'all cool? Excellent. This is really good. It's a good day. Now, is there a better method? Is there a reason why you would rather count boxes versus divide 300 by the number of big boxes within 2 complexes? Yes. When the rate is irregular, when the heart rate is irregular, you're better off counting boxes. And the more boxes you count, the better. Okay? Are you following me? When the rate is irregular, you're better off counting boxes than dividing QRS complexes by 300. Okay? Why is that important? Look at this script, for instance. If you determine the heart rate by counting only 15 large boxes, you will get the beat to be 60. But if you count for 30 large boxes, the heart rate is 70. Do you see what I'm saying? So when the heart rate is irregular, you're better off counting for longer, for many more boxes, 30 at least. It's just like when you're determining pulse rate. You can determine for 6 seconds and multiply by 10. But if your pulse rate is slow and irregular, you want to count for like 30 seconds, right? Or even the whole minute, right? The same technique, the same reasoning, the same logic. You got that? So, here, what is the heart rate here? Doesn't matter, you can use anything, anyone you want. You can use any technique you want.
No, I mean, like, do I use the, does it matter which line I
It
use?
does not matter.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. But if you look in lead one,
Yeah.
the first two complexes in lead one, they sit right at the borders of two big boxes, right? So what is the heart rate? 150. Exactly. You see, the thing about it is, you don't need to look and count. Just look at everything in a single glance and look at the best complex that will give you the answer you're looking for, right? Like these two complexes in lead one, they're perfect. They sit right on the borders of two big boxes. That's your answer right there. Yes, Wendy.
Can you go back to the other, the slide before this? I don't, like, I get how you can calculate, like, why is it that you can't use the 300 divided still? Because isn't there still, like, complex like that already on, how am I trying to answer that? Like, why can't you still use the 300? Because if you said it's about an estimate, 60 and 70, the 10.
If you divide 300 by the number of boxes within these two complexes, it's a little over 60, right? Because if this one is a little out, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, if you divide 300 by 4, that's 75. So the pulse rate is even over 70 if you use that technique. The message of this slide is to tell you one thing, that when there is slight irregularity or irregularity period in the rate, the longer and more boxes you use, the better you will do.
So in this case, how did they get to the 70? 'Cause
Say it again?
in this case, how did they get to the 70?
Yeah, tell me, how do you get 70?
Because I'm looking at it, and the way I thought the 70.
Okay, let's how they get 70. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Right? So
Okay.
20 boxes.
Okay.
How many complexes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What are you going to multiply with? 10. Right? 300.
30 boxes. Does the 30 make the 300? 30 times the 10 makes.
Were you sleeping?
No, but I'm confused.
Why are you confused?
No, I know how to
just-
do it. Like, I know how to do this by like the 300.
Yeah,
but now
but it's exactly what is here is what I did over there. What I did over there was to tell you, okay, I told you that there are two ways you can look at heart rate. You can divide 300, which is 1 minute, by the number of boxes, big boxes, between any two complexes, right? If it is 1, that means the rate is 300. If it is 2, it is 150. If it is 4, it is 75, right?
Okay.
That's one technique.
Yeah.
Another technique is to actually count a number of boxes. You can count 300 boxes,
Okay.
and that represents 1 minute.
Okay.
And then you count the number of QRS complexes inside that 300 box.
Okay.
And that gives you the heart rate. But I said you will be wasting a lot of EKG data, right? But then you can say, okay, fine, I'm going to count only for 30 boxes. Count 30 boxes, right? And then you count the number of QRS complexes within 30 boxes,
Okay.
right? And that is 6 seconds. So you multiply it by 10. Because every big box is 0.2, right? So if you count 30, what is that? Is this confusing?
No, like the reason why I'm confused, like I know the whole thing with the 300, like I know how to calculate it, that's not the issue. But the math is not clicking for me in terms of doing it the opposite, the other.
We're not doing it any opposite.
Well, not the opposite, like the other, because you said there's 2 methods, the 300 divided by.
Yes.
Okay, that one I understand. But now when you go into like counting the amount of boxes and like I'm not getting.
It's the same thing. Okay. Let's wait. No, you need to get this. EKG paper travels at 25 millimeters per second.
Okay.
The EKG paper is ruled in 5 millimeters, right? So in a minute, there will be 300 big boxes. And that is why the way you get there is divide 60 seconds by 3.2 seconds. Right? So in a minute, there will be 300. If you want to know the rate is usually number over time, right? If you want to know the number of times the heart is beating per minute, well, you can just find out what a minute is on the EKG. And there are two ways you can represent a minute on the EKG. Many ways actually. You can look at 300 boxes that represent a whole minute, and then count the number of QRS complexes within that 300. That is one way to do it, but it's not cost effective. Or you can say, okay, fine, I will just count 30 big boxes. Well, if you count 30 big boxes, 30 big boxes represent 6 seconds, because each box is 0.2 seconds. So 30 represents 6 seconds. So if you count the number of QRS boxes in 30 boxes, that is the amount of beats in 6 seconds. If you want to know what the beat will be in 60 seconds, then you multiply that by 10, right? Now, if you do it in 15 light squares, right, you're only going to be doing it in 3 seconds. Then you now have to multiply the number of QRS complexes you get in 3 seconds by 20 to get the rate in minutes. That is one way to do it. The other way to do it is to look at how many big boxes are between 2 QRS complexes. That's the rate. If there's only one, that means the rate is 300. If there are 2, that means the rate is 150. If there are 4, that means the rate is 75, right? Now, these two techniques are valid. The question is there a preference? Are there times you prefer one over the other? Yes, there are times you prefer one over the other. And that is in cases where there is some irregularity, baseline irregularity, okay? And in this place, when you count 15 boxes, right, you get this 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The rate at the 3-second mark, which is really 15 boxes, right, is 60. But if you extend it to the 6 second, where it is really the 30 box mark, right, you calculate the rate, you get 70, right? And then if you use the other technique, let's count it, let's divide 300 by the number of big boxes within 2 complexes, you get something a little over 75. So you see what I'm saying to you? What I'm saying to you is, yes, the rate will vary depending on the technique you're using and the regularity of the rhythm. If the rhythm is extremely irregular, you're better off just counting for 30 big boxes so you can get the most accurate, okay? And technically speaking, really, there is a more effective way of doing this. Just count the patient's pulse or count the heart sound, right? You got it now?
Yeah, I do.
Good.
So wait, quick question. So then, if you're testing us, would it be that you, like in a question like this, would it be 60 beats per minute, 70 beats per minute, 80 beats per minute?
Usually I would never ask you to determine a rate on any EKG. My grandmother can do that. No, I will never ask you to determine a rate. I will be asking you some more serious stuff on the EKG. So I'm just telling you how the machine will do it. Okay? So I understand the anxiety. And we already determined what this rate is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is normal heart rate?
69.
Thank you. So whenever the heart rate is more than 100, the same patient is tachycardia, right? What are the causes of tachycardia? Look at when general, somebody is in pain, fever, exercising, anxious, systemic, they have arrhythmia, they have heart failure, they have respiratory failure, they are in shock, they are anemic, they are thyrotoxic, they have pheochromocytoma. All of these will give you tachycardia. Medications, you give somebody updraft, atropine, amphetamine, hydrolazine, theophylline, thyroxine. They can cause tachycardia. Recreational agents like cocaine, heroin, stimulants, caffeine, you drank coffee, you drink alcohol, you smoke cigarette. For the first 30 minutes after cigarette, your heart rate will be fast. Okay? Then cardiac arrhythmias. Why am I repeating myself? Okay. Cardiac arrhythmias can cause tachycardia. So basically, when you see tachycardia, you've got to address it. This is not where you do that. I'm talking to you how you recognize tachycardia and EKG. In physical diagnosis or in arrhythmia, we talk about how you treat, evaluate tachycardia. But right now, you just need to recognize tachycardia and EKG. You're good?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
So, why is it that you can, no, you can go back to the EKG. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Why is it that you can calculate the heart rate based on any lead, but you don't have to calculate on like, you don't have the bottom of the EKG strip as the continuous one? I thought.
But I'm not even talking about that.
Oh.
Right. I'm not saying anything about any continuous sleep, right?
No, the
Right.
only reason why I'm saying that is because, like, I thought usually when you calculate the rate, you have to calculate it on a continuous one because the lead, it can be that after that lead, there's.
Yeah, you may not be able to count 15 boxes in a lead, right? You're right. And that is why I'm going to talk about this now. If you look at any EKG, there are 12 leads that are recorded very short, usually 3 complexes. Right? See lead 1, how many complexes? Even this one has, 3 complexes. Look at lead 2, he has only 3 complexes. ABL, 3 complexes. But if you look at the bottom of every EKG, usually there is one strip. It is either lead 2 or B5 or B6, one of them. Usually it's lead 2. And it will be recorded for a long time, from the beginning to the end. Right, this is your calibration, right? Your voltage calibration thing, right? And then it goes all the way down. That particular strip that goes all the way down is what is called the rhythm strip. Okay? That strip is given to you to determine heart rate and to examine the rhythm of the heart. That is why it is called the rhythm strip. So usually, you will not calculate the heart rate by counting big boxes in any other strip but in the rhythm strip. Okay? And usually it's only one lead 2 usually, but sometimes they will give you lead 2 and B5 or even B1 sometimes. Alright? So when you see an EKG, complete EKG, you will see 12 leads. And one of those leads will be recorded for a longer period. And that long strip that is recorded for almost the entire length of the EKG paper is called the rhythm strip. So if I tell you what is the heart rate on this patient or what is the rhythm in this patient, please don't look at lead 1, lead 2, lead 3. No, look for the rhythm strip. You look for rhythm abnormalities in rhythm strips. If you don't have rhythm strips, then you don't have any option. You have to use what you got, right? But usually, I would never. In fact, sometimes when I have a rhythm question for you, I only give you the rhythm strip. When you go visit somebody in the coronary care unit, they always see EKG strip on the monitor, right? It's always the rhythm strip that is on that monitor. And there is somebody at the nursing station looking at it to find out when the patient goes out of normal rhythm. Okay? That's it. All right, this is simple.
No, wait, Dr. Mine, how do you, I can't really see the graphics.
Oh, you can?
No.
Okay.
What do you think? Well, like.
This is lead 2.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. This is normal lead 2. How many complexes do you see there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Are you kidding me? You're counting ABL as lead 2.
Oh, sorry.
This is lead 2. It stops right here. This is the beginning of ABL. That straight line there is the beginning of ABL. And then this is 1, 2, and then there is a little bit of an overlap. This strip is funky. You see? Because it does not really tell the line of the demarcation of ABR and B1 is blood. Right? Usually when you look at an EKG, you see a complex, then you see a break. That tells you that's all you got for lead 2. And then from here going forward is ABL. And then right about here, there is supposed to be this same line, but it's superimposed on that first complex, right? So from here on out, is V2. V2 stops right here. From here now, that line tells you this is now V6 or V5, right? So this is what you find in normal EKGs. You always have like 3 complexes and there's that barrier that tells you lead is changing, ABR, then there's that flip, there's this is now V1, there's that flip, then this is now V4, and the same thing. But you don't find that in rhythm strips. Rhythm strips are one recording, same complex all the way. You don't have that break. Got it? Please ask questions. There are no dumb questions, only dumb answers. So ask. You will never irritate me by asking questions. And if you say because you don't want to appear like you don't understand, when you flunk, you'll be the only one doing remediation, and everybody you know you're doing remediation. Okay, so ask your question now. It's the best thing to do, okay?
Question.
All right?
So would the rhythm strip be also V2 and then V5? Can you
No,
look at
I told you that usually the rhythm strip is one lead. It's usually one lead. Usually the one that is taken is lead 2. But sometimes some EKG machine will do both lead 2 and one of the precordial leads. Usually V1 or V5 or V6. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
The way you recognize it is not the lead. It is the length of the recording. The difference between the way you recognize a rhythm strip is that is the only strip that spans the entire length of the EKG paper without any demarcation. Okay, it could be whatever lead it is, it will be given to you right at the beginning. Got it?
I think her question was, is V5 a rhythm strip too?
Yeah. Yeah. Any strip that is recorded for the entire length of the EKG paper is a rhythm strip. If this was V6, then it's a rhythm strip, right? So this is the V5 rhythm strip. This is the V5 lead. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Are we good now? Have green light to go? Excellent. Okay. All right. So remember when we're talking about what? Oh, what happened? I skipped something?
Here.
Okay. So, Maureen, what is the heart rate here?
Uh, 45?
Good. What is the best place to look for the heart rate here?
Lead 2.
Lead to the rhythm strip, right? And look, these two complexes, they sit right almost on the borders, right? So you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Divide 300 by 6, what do you have? 50, right? What is normal heart rate? 60, 300. When the heart rate is less than 60, you say the patient is radical. Okay? Radical. Radical. Any question? Wendy, you have a question?
No.
You're good? Okay. So you know I counted the boxes and divided by 300, right? And because the rhythm is still regular, that will work. Right? Are we good? Excellent. And these are the causes of bradycardia. Intracranial hypertension. If somebody is bleeding into their brain and they are developing, and the intracranial pressure is increased, which is called intracranial hypertension, you can get bradycardia. It's not an early sign. If you see bradycardia in somebody with hemorrhage in the brain, they're about to die. Okay, because the only time that happens is there is so much pressure above the tentorium that is squeezing the vital centers in the brain. That means that person needs the borehole now, or you're going to lose them. The same thing, intraocular hypertension. You can get that from glaucoma, or you can get that from hemorrhage, like when you bleed into your retina, boom, your heart rate will slow down. Okay? A good example I can give you is I'll give you a picture. I'll tell you a 72-year-old hypertensive, diabetic female with a history of atrial fibrillations on warfarin for anticoagulation, present with sudden loss of vision in the right eye, and physical examination is unremarkable except for a pulse rate of 40. I'll tell you what is going on. Diagnosis: heart attack, stroke, intraocular hemorrhage, intraocular hypertension. So you know the answer is not going to be hemorrhage, it's going to be intraocular hypertension. You got that? All right. Hypothyroidism, obstructive jaundice in children, vagotonic procedures like ocular massage. Vagotonic procedures are procedures that increase your vagus nerve activity. You know sleeper hold that you do in wrestling? Yeah. When you massage the carotid sinus, you set off the vagal impulse and you slow the heart and the guy will pass out. When you let him go and he hits the floor, gravity will restore blood flow to his brain to wake up. Okay? That is why when we're doing Valsalva maneuver or you're doing meso, that's why we don't put NG tube in people when they have heart attack. Because you can trigger the vagus nerve, send them into arrhythmia. They're already having heart attack. Why do you want to send them into arrhythmia? So, athletic conditioning, if you're a good athlete, you tend to have bradycardia. Why do they have bradycardia? Because if you're a very good athlete, you have a very strong heart. When you have a strong heart, that means your stroke volume is humongous. Your stroke volume is not, your ejection fraction is not 50. Because your heart muscles are so strong, your ejection fraction is like 75. Well, if your ejection fraction is 75, that means your stroke volume is huge. If your stroke volume is huge, your brain would slow down your heart rate. You don't need, your heart does not need to beat as fast to maintain your cardiac output. It can beat less because you have such an efficient myocardium. So usually athletes, they have pulse rate in the 50s. Okay? Anybody's pulse rate in the 50s? Yes? 54, yeah. That's how you know how well conditioned you are as an athlete. Mine used to be 52, and doctors used to worry, but now my resting is 78. You can tell how conditioned I am. All right, so, but I want to give you a clue. How do you tell somebody who is conditioned from somebody who is having a heart block by the bedside? You feel your patient pulse on a routine physical examination, and pulse is 52. How do you tell that, well, you'll be fine, you're just conditioned, you can go home, versus I need to call 911 right now? It's simple. All you need to do is at the same time, right there and then, tell the guy to do a couple of sit-ups. When he does a couple of sit-ups, you take his pulse, his heart rate will increase. That is sinus bradycardia. That increase in heart rate when the guy does a couple of sit-ups is what we call chronotropic competence. That means he can increase his heart rate if he needs to. So he's not sick. You can send him home. But if you tell the guy to do a couple of sit-ups and his heart rate went from 54 to 48, you need to call 911. Because that is a heart block right there. Okay? So these are causes of sinus bradycardia. There are medications that will do with beta blockade, digoxin, toxicity, all these calcium channel blockers, specifically this is here. Please, could you put none in front of this? These are not dihydropyridines. These are non-dihydropyridines. Okay? The dihydropyridines, remember pharmacology? The dihydropyridines are your amlo the pin, below the pin, after the pin, right? So the thiazide and verapamil are non-dihydropyridines. That is a terrible, terrible mistake. Okay, so put this, so I'm talking about the thiazide and verapamil. And remember in pharmacology, I told you, you never give butazine with a beta blocker. Remember that? The reason I told you couldn't give verapamil or butazine with a beta blocker is because both medications will cause bradycardia. You will hurt somebody if you do that. Then heart block, it could be at the SA node level, it could be at the AV node level, or it could be a cardiac arrhythmia. Okay? Moving on. So this is your reading script, we already covered this, right? Yeah. Excellent. Now, remember when we were doing cardiovascular physiology a couple of lectures ago, I told you that the cardiac center is very close to the respiratory center in the brainstem. So the neural impulses from the cardiac center, they can radiate to the surrounding respiratory center and actually influence it. And you remember in that class, I told you to put your hand on your pulse and take a deep, slow breath. And you all told me you felt your pulse increase slightly when you take a deep, slow breath, right? Changes in your heart rate that are related to your respiratory rate is what we call sinus arrhythmia. Okay? And the way you see it is, when you look at EKGs, there are long pulses and short pulses, but they are very fine, you know. So the QRS complexes will spread and come close, spread and come close during the patient's respiration as the EKG is being recorded. Okay, that compression and rarefaction of the complexes with respiration is what we call sinus arrhythmia. And you could see it in that bottom strip. You see what happens during inspiration? The complexes come together, and during expiration, they spread out, right? So that alteration is what we call sinus arrhythmia. I want you to pay attention. In sinus arrhythmia, the complexes are identical. They are not similar. There's a difference between similar and identical. Okay? They are exactly the same thing. Okay? If those complexes are not the same thing, they are not identical, please don't call it sinus arrhythmia. You have something else going on. Okay? In sinus arrhythmia, the complexes are identical. Okay? Sinus arrhythmia happens in everybody, but it is not electrocardiographically apparent in everybody. So you won't see it in everybody's EKG, but you will see it in some EKG. And you need to be able to recognize what it is, because sometimes you'll be referring people to cardiology for sinus arrhythmia. And your Kaiser will fire you number one. And people won't like you. You will just make people work harder than they need to work. You will put cost on the healthcare system. You will send a lot of good cardiologists that have normal heart and normal leakage. You must be able to recognize sinus arrhythmia. Understand what it is, recognize it, and leave it alone. Okay? All right, so remember I told you that when you're looking for regularity in the heart rhythm, you look at the rhythm script. There are three types of irregularity you can see on the rhythm script. There is occasional irregularity, and there is regular irregularity, and there is irregular irregularity. What's the difference? Listen. That is occasional irregularity. Okay? is irregularity. Okay? That is what you will hear if you listen with the stethoscope. On the EKG, occasional irregularity will look like this. You see a complex, and then boom, you see this thing here. And then you feel this one, and then boom, you see this. See that, see that, see that, everything is normal. See, it comes back to back and it goes over. How do you know that this is a weird beat? This is not a normal beat. How do you know that? Look at it. Look at the complex. This complex and this complex, they are not the same. The difference is in the P wave. This P wave and this P wave, they didn't come from the same place. Everybody agree with me? The QRS is the same. This is a normal beat. This is an abnormal beat. This is a normal beat. This is an abnormal beat. This is a normal beat. This is a normal beat. This is a normal beat. Normal beat. When you see this, you know that this is an abnormal beat, right? It's an abnormal beat in two ways. This is a normal beat. The normal beat that is supposed to follow this is supposed to come right here. But this beat came early, right? So it's a premature beat because it came earlier than expected. Now, because it has a normal QRS and an abnormal P wave, we know it came from the atria. Because it came from the atria and used the AV node to depolarize the ventricle. Because it used the AV node to depolarize the ventricles, the QRS will be normal. But the P wave will be abnormal because it came from a different place, not the SA node. This P wave here is normal because it came from the SA node. This one is normal because it came from the SA node. This one is normal because it came from the SA node. These two, they are abnormal and they came from the same place. How do I know? Because they look identical. When they look identical and they're abnormal, that means they're unifocal. So the complete description for this will be a unifocal premature atrial complex. Okay? It's premature because it came early. It is unifocal because it maintains its configuration throughout. The QRS is normal. That means the abnormalities in the atria. So it's a unifocal premature atrial complex. You got that? Good. Some people will call this ectopic beat. Please don't do that. Because ectopic just means it came from an unusual place. That doesn't tell me anything. That unusual place could be in the ventricle, it could be in the atria. So to tell somebody has ectopics does not even make any sense. Okay? Say what it is. Is it a BAC or is it a PVC? This one is a BAC and it's unifocal. It's coming from one place. If this P wave over here had been different from this one and from this one, I would have called it multifocal. Okay, I would have called it multifocal premature atrial complexes. Okay? Excellent. So look at this one. Let's look at the second strip. Look at the second strip. This is a normal SA node beat. If you went to depolarize the atria, got conducted, depolarize the ventricle, waited, did the same thing over here. If you're not looking up right now, you're missing a great deal. You should be looking at this board right now. This one is normal. This one is normal. Why am I saying they're normal? They look identical. The P T waves are identical, QRS are identical, the T wave are identical, right? So these are normal beats. They all look alike. But then is this crazy one right here. Number one, it does not have a P wave, that I can see clearly, right? And it does not look like any other QRS before it. I remember QRS always represent ventricular activity. So you will call this premature ventricular complex. PVC. Okay? Why is it PVC? Because it's a ventricular complex. Why is it a ventricular complex? Because QRS is a one. Why is it PAC? Because it's an atrial complex. Why is it an atrial complex? Because QRS is not. Is that confusing? Now, look at this one. Look at this one. Normal beat, normal beat, normal beat. What the heck happened? There's supposed to be normal beat. It didn't come. And then normal beat resumed. Whenever you see these kind of gaps in EKG, the patient dropped the beat. Okay, it's called drop beat. Okay? Now, this is so rare clinically because anytime there is a long pause, an ectopic beat will come in, either a PVC or a PAC. Okay? So occasionally you will see drop beats. I'll give you exams that show drop beats, but depends on where you are, you may or may never see drop beats. Now, so whenever you see, if you now go to physical diagnosis and they tell you, okay, the pulse is irregular, or you're describing, if I'm there, and one of you is I'm going to be there, and I ask you what is the pulse, and you say the pulse is irregular, I would just look at you like, what? If I was you, right, and you and me, and I'm describing a patient's pulse, and I say the pulse is irregular, would you be happy with me? No. You should give me a lot more information. What does irregular mean? But if you tell me the pulse is occasionally irregular, and I ask you, so what are the possible causes of occasional irregularity? Then you tell me PAC, PVC, drop it. That's it. You see, whenever people ask you questions, and you deprive them of details, you punish yourself. Let me tell you why that happens. If I tell you, what is the pulse like? And you tell me the pulse is irregular, I say, fine, that's good. So what are the differential diagnoses of irregular pulse? You are expected to come up with over a dozen lists of irregular pulse causes. But if you say there is occasional irregularity, and somebody asks you what are the causes of that, there are only three. So give people in your physical examination enough details. When you're writing your patients up and they have occasional irregularity, and you say irregularity, in your discussion, if you say irregularity, you will be expected to discuss a dozen differential diagnoses. But if in your write-up you describe it specifically as occasional irregularity, you're limited only to 3 differential diagnoses. And how do you tell the difference between PVC, PAC, drop it, you have to do an EKG. So that is why whenever you see occasional irregularity in pulse, you must do EKG. Okay, because you need to know whether it's PAC, is it PVC, is patient dropping beats. Okay?
Dr. Martins?
Yes.
You said that a drop beat usually gets replaced by what?
An ectopic beat.
An ectopic beat. Okay.
Okay, so this is regular, irregular rhythm. Regular, irregular rhythm. Let's take a look at the first one. This complex got cut off, but it's followed by this complex. They have this thing here, right? And then, get this. They have this thing here again. Then you get this, You got it here again. You have this, you have this, you got it here again. What is going on here?
It's pattern.
So this is a P wave that got conducted. Here is another one, but it was not conducted, it was blocked, right? Because it's not followed. This P wave is followed by a normal QRS, right? That means it got conducted, right? This one is a P wave not followed by a QRS. That means it was not conducted, right? Then you have this one not conducted. Then you have this one conducted, conducted, not conducted, 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 not conducted, 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 not conducted. So you see that every third P wave is getting blocked, right? 1, 2, boom, boom, 1, 2, boom, 1, 2, boom, 1, 2, boom, 1, 2, 3, boom. Anyway, something is happening. The P waves are getting blocked. They're not getting conducted as you move forward. That is a half block, right? So the way you see a half block on the EKG is that you will see P waves that are not conducted, P waves that are not conducted. In this particular lead, in V1, it's not very good. It's not a good place to do. When you look at lead 2, that is why lead 2 is always a good lead for reading. When you look at lead 2, you could actually tell the T wave from the V wave, right? You see that in V1, technically speaking, if I ask you, this will be the T wave to this complex. How do you know it's not? The reason I know it's not is because I'm looking at it here, right? So, always look, let me tell you, in your EKG exam, I will show you a complete EKG with crazy reading and a few normal reading. If you chose to look in the wrong place, you will get the wrong answer. When you look at an EKG, look at the one that gives you the most normal appearance. Right here, I see what looks like a V, I see a QRS, then I see this complex. I don't know what this complex is. And I can't tell if it's a P wave or if it's a T wave. So I'm not going to call anything here. I'll go to a lead where I'm able to see things clearly. And you see, because this complex here is rhyming in time with this complex here, I know this is a P wave, not a T wave. Right? So that is why I tell you that this is a P wave that got conducted, this is a P wave that got blocked, this is a P wave that got conducted, this is a P wave that got blocked, P wave that got conducted, conducted, got blocked, conducted, conducted, got blocked. So this person has half block, and it's a little bit, kind of consistent a little bit. You know, it's like every third, for the most part, every third P wave is getting blocked, right? Everybody could see that, right? And over here, see what is happening. The P wave is not particularly obvious, but the QRS are interesting, right? This is a normal QRS, they get this weird thing coming. Normal QRS, this weird thing here. Normal, this weird thing. And you see that there is an unholy alliance between a ventricular focus that is firing PVCs and the SA node. They have agreed that every third beat will be the echo, right? So you see, it's a BBC because this QRS is weird, right? This is not a QRS, this is a BBC. And this is a BBC because the QRS is what's wrong, right? And it's a BBC because it came early. And this will give you a regularly irregular rhythm. So this is the person that when you feel their pulse, it feels like right. So this ectopic will come earlier than it should be, and the pulse will be regularly irregular. Okay. So when somebody asks you, if you tell somebody this patient has a regularly irregular pulse, there are only really two differential diagnoses, right? Either, and whenever this happens, whenever you have a DBC, after every third beat, that's what we call a trigeminal rhythm. Trigeminal. Tri means every third beat is off, right? Sometimes it's every second beat. When it is every second beat, you say the patient has a bigeminal rhythm. Every second beat is off, right? So, if somebody asks you, what are the differential diagnoses of regularly irregular rhythm? There are only three of them. Heart block, or DBCs, bigeminal or trigeminal rhythm, depending on what you're feeling. If you say every third beat, that patient has a trigeminal rhythm. Every second beat is bigeminal rhythm. Bottom line is that they are regularly irregular. You got that? Any questions? Okay. Now, this is the craziest of them all, right? Irregularly irregular rhythm. How do you recognize it? Just looking at an EKG, the RR interval should not vary by more than 0.16. It shouldn't. Whenever you see this kind of crazy RR interval, short interval, RR interval, short, varying all over the place, that is an irregularly irregular rhythm. How do you tell this apart from sinus arrhythmia? How do you tell it apart from sinus arrhythmia? The way you know this is not sinus arrhythmia is because it's not progressive. You see, in sinus arrhythmia, the QRS complexes, they come close and they spread in a very uniform manner. You don't find the longest duration next to the shortest duration. You will see it gently expanding and gently compressing. Gently expanding and gently compressing. You don't see the longest one coming close to the shortest one, and then the shortest one in this lead is different from the shortest one in this lead. Right? That is how you know. Okay? So remember, in sinus arrhythmia, the RR interval varies, but it's uniform expansion and compression. Whereas in somebody with irregularly irregular rhythm, the RR interval is totally crazy, it's chaotic, it's not organized. Okay? Are you with me? So that is all about rhythm. So when you talk about rhythm, if I ask you to tell me about the rhythm, I want you to tell me, is it irregular? In other words, does every complex have a P, a QRS, and a T, and they don't come at regular interval? If it is irregular, I need you to tell me more. Is it occasional irregularity? Is it a regular irregularity? Or is it an irregular irregularity? Do yourself a favor. Describe it in detail. Because if you don't, you'll be required to discuss a bunch of crap in your discussion that you don't need to bother yourself with. That's why you see some people, when you're on rotation, some people write 12-page of patient encounter summary of history, and they get a B-. And somebody sends in 4 pages, and they get an A+. It is not the redundancy, the useless detail that is important. It is the amount of information you're supplying. You understand what I'm saying? So now, what is orientation? So we've talked about axis, right? Rate, rhythm. Now I'm going to talk about orientation. Orientation is very easy. Remember, AVR. AVR, where is AVR? Ali, where is AVR? Right. So where is your heart? So AVR is looking at the heart in the very opposite direction. So in a normal EKG, where the leads are placed correctly, and your patient's heart is in the right place, AVR should be inverted. Both the P, the QRS, and the T. AVR should be completely inverted. Okay? So if you look at an EKG, just look at all the leads, look at AVR, it should be inverted. And when I say inverted, I mean the P wave, the QRS, and the T completely inverted. And usually, lead 1 is upright. When that AVR is not inverted, your orientation is not right. Something is wrong with that EKG, or something is wrong with the patient. You need to address that. So, when you're doing clinical rotation, and you look at an EKG, and you say, the orientation is abnormal, people will ask you, what do you mean by that? Or you say, oh, the AVR is supposed to be inverted. It is not. Okay? The reason I'm telling you this is because that orientation piece, only you will use that word. Only you will use that word on this planet. And someone will ask you, what do you mean by that? Then you'll explain it. The AVR is not inverted like it should. Now, what are the reasons why that might be? So let's take a look at this EKG very carefully. Justin, this is your welcome. All right. So look at this EKG. Is there a QRS axis deviation? Good. It looks like there is a QRS axis deviation. What is the deviation? It looks like a right axis deviation, right? Is the orientation normal? AVR.
No, it's not normal.
Thank you. The AVR, the question is, why are the B waves inverted in lead 1? Notice, I asked you, the first question I asked you was, is there a QRS axis deviation? You said yes. The reason you said yes was because you are so fixated on the QRS, you didn't notice the B wave. The P wave is not supposed to be negative in lead 1. Is it supposed to be? It is only the QRS axis, the QRS that you're looking at for axis. But if you remember, look at this lead 1. P wave is inverted. And now my question is, why do you think the P wave is inverted in lead 1? Thank you. He thinks that they didn't do the EKG right. So you will see this type of situation if your medical assistant switch the lead. Call the right one left and call the left one right. Right? And the way you will know is that AVR will look like lead 1 and lead 1 will look like AVR. Wait, don't write anything. Get to the bottom of the story. So we assume that maybe the patient, your medical assistant switched the leads, right? That is one possibility. But David, what else could be happening? Maybe the patient's heart is not in the right place, right? Maybe the patient has a right-sided heart, right? If the patient has a right-sided heart, it will look like that. How would you tell the difference?
Listen to the heart.
No, not listen to the heart. Say your patient is now coming, or you listen to the heart, you thought you heard something, and now EKG is here. Your patient's heart may not be in the right place. So you get this. How would you tell when your EKG leads are switched versus when your patient's heart is on the opposite side?
First check the leads.
Yes, you look at the precarious chest leads. When you look at the precarious chest lead, you look at the R wave. Remember when I was talking to you about R wave progression? When the heart is in the right place, the R wave in the precordial leads increases from predominantly negative to predominantly positive, from V1 to V6. And we called it normal R wave progression. Remember that? Kiera, look at V1, look at V6. Are these R wave progressing? No, they're actually regressing. Right? Patients. Because if your medical assistant switch the leads on you, that still affect the precordial recording. Right? The only time you will get this is when your patient has dextrocardia, when the heart is on the right side. Okay? If your MA switch the leads, the R wave progression will be normal. Okay? Let me summarize. You're writing. You should be listening more. Abnormal orientation. AVR is flipped. Two main causes. Arm lead switched or dextrocardia. How do you tell the difference? Look at the precordial leads. If R wave progressed normally from negative to positive, then the patient's heart is in the right place, the MA is screwed up. But if R wave, rather than progressed, regressed, then your patient has dextrocardia. Then you have to do a chest X-ray. Right? And you see that the right side. Okay? And I told you, how does it look on EKG? You will see a right axis deviation. It will look like a right axis deviation. But if you are very astute, you will notice that the P waves are inverted too in lead one. You will see a positive reflection in AVR, and you will see R wave regression in the precordial chest leads. Okay?
How common is that?
How common is dextrocardia? Oh yes. It's not like you see it in every other patient, but if you miss it, that's the problem. It's like 1 in 10,000 or so. Good. It's not how common it is. It's do you want to miss it? Because if you miss it, then you're a potential target for a lawsuit. Right? Especially in pediatric practice. Okay.
But Dr. Martins, would you hear? You wouldn't hear anything on the left when they said.
If you listen to the heart, you won't hear the heart sound on the left side where you're supposed to hear it. Yes? This is EKG class. So I'm pretending like we're going to make all decisions based on EKG. Okay. Are you good with this? Okay. So could you tell me what is going on here? Where the lead switched, or does the patient have dextrocardia? And tell me the basis for your decision.
AVR is positive instead of negative, so it's either of those two. So, looking at my precordial lead, there is a regression.
Is this dextrocardia or is it switching? The arm leads are reversed. Which one? You already recognize the fact that something is wrong with the orientation. AVR is split. And then you said there are two possibilities, reverse arm leads or dextrocardia. So you go to the chest leads. What are you looking for? You're looking for R wave progression. Did R wave progress in the precordial leads?
Yeah.
Yes, it went from negative to positive, so it progressed. So what is the answer?
Sorry, when you said progression, so you're
Progression
looking at-
means that the R wave from V1, you go from predominantly negative to predominantly positive. That's what progression is. And the way it happens is the R wave will increase and become about equiphasic between 3 and 4 and becomes predominantly positive in 5 and 6. But bottom line is R wave progression means that I remind myself of Dallas Rain. You know who Dallas Rain is?
Yeah,
I
that.
don't know. Yeah, he does that. No, I don't want to be like Dallas Rain. Right, so bottom line is that the QRS is predominantly negative in V1 and becomes positive in V6. If that is the case, the R wave progressed. Okay, so what is the answer here?
Reverse.
Reverse arm leads. Okay, excellent.
Dr. Barnes,
Yeah.
I know we're saying like R wave, but it seems like the whole QRS complex like flips, right? Why do we choose
Where?
like as far as like progressing from negative to positive?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at like that one right here. It's going down and
This
don't wanna-
one?
Yeah. I'm actually looking at like the bigger like the QRS complex.
Yeah, QRS complex. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why do we choose to say like the R wave is progressing instead of?
Okay. It's a choice of words.
Okay.
If you focus only on the R wave, it goes from least to the greatest. The R wave is a positive lead. So when it goes from least in V1 to the greatest in V6, it made progress. Another way you can say it is QRS is predominantly negative in V1 and predominantly positive in V6. The same thing, same phenomenon, and you call it progress.
Okay.
Don't ever forget to look for R wave progression on EKG. It holds some important information for you. Okay? Everybody with me?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Can I move on?
Yes.
So basically, whenever your patients, your medical assistant switch leads on you, if they switch the arm lead, then your AVR is technically your AVL, right? And your AVF is technically your lead 3. No, your lead 2 is technically your lead 3. And the AVF, I guess, is as good as mine. Why do they do this? Why does it happen in practice? Why would your medical assistant do this sometimes? Sometimes people have prosthesis, right? Or they have amputation. Maybe a diabetic patient have had their left foot cut off. And they need to do an EKG. They'll put the limb on the left foot, and then they don't know where to put the right foot because there's no limb there, right? And then some of them will be smart enough to come and ask you. Others will just put it wherever they can and walk away. And they will give you an EKG. And the whole thing will be looking all messed up and screwy. So basically what I put here is for you to know what will happen. For you to know what will happen if somebody switches your arm leads. Your AVR is technically speaking your AVL, right? And your AVL is actually your AVR, right? Your AVF will begin to look like your lead 2, and your lead 2 will begin to look like your AVF. So this chaos is what you want to avoid by validating AVR deflection. When you look at your EKG, after axis, you look at rate, you look at rhythm, you look at orientation. If you miss that step, you will not recognize when somebody has made a mistake in your EKG recording. Okay? You're good? All right. So, we've done axis, we've done rate, we've done rhythm, we've done orientation. Now we're going to go to waves. Okay? EKG waves are P wave, Q wave, R wave, S wave, T wave. Generally speaking, the Q, R, and the S wave occur together without any interval between them, so we call them QRS, complex, right? So let's start with the P wave. So, when the atrial depolarize, the SA node is in the right atrium, right? Right? So when the atria depolarize, either which atria will depolarize first? The right? So the right will depolarize first, its P wave will come like that. And closely following that will be the left, because the interatrial nodal tract will take it to the other side, but it will start a little later. So the left will come and depolarize. So what you see on the EKG as the P wave is the summation of these two waves. Okay? Now, if for any reason the right atrium is enlarged, right? What do you expect the P wave from that atrium to be? Bigger. Good. So it will look like this. If the right atrium is enlarged, the P wave from it will look like this. Right? If the left atrium is normal, it will maintain its normal size, right? When these two waves sum up together, the P wave will look like this. Because this wave will be buried inside that one, right? So whenever the right atrium is enlarged, P waves become taller. So right atrial enlargement increases the amplitude, the height of the P wave. And because that is always due to lung disease, that particular tall P wave is called P pulmonale. Okay? You got that? Excellent. Now, let's go back. The SA node is in the right atrium. So the right atrium always discharges first and registers P wave. And usually is followed by the left atrium depolarization. And what you see on the EKG is the summation of both waves. Supposing the left atrium is the one that is enlarged, it comes later and it goes taller. Right? When these two waves sum up, you get a P wave that looks like this. And because left atrial enlargement is usually due to mitral valve disease, this is called P mitrale. The difference between P mitrale and P pulmonale is that P pulmonale is an increase in the amplitude, the voltage of the P wave, whereas P mitrale is an increase in the duration of the P wave. You got that? Right? So that is what my next, and what do I mean by is tall, is long? Normal P wave is supposed to be no more than 3 small squares in duration. and it shouldn't be taller than 2.5 small squares. Okay? So basically just expect that a normal P wave should rise about half into the big box and should lengthen about half into the big box.
Say that
You
again.
got that?
Say that again.
So if this is your big EKG box, a normal P wave should be about halfway high, halfway low. Right? Normal P wave. But in the big box, it should be about high and about high. The P wave, not the PR interval, just the P wave. The beginning and the end of the P wave. Yes. Wendy?
The difference between P pulmonale and P mitrale is P mitrale increases in the duration.
Yes.
P pulmonale
Increase in amplitude,
amplitude.
the height and the width. Okay? All right. So that is this is what I was telling you, that the P wave you're looking at here is actually a summation of the right and left atrial repolarization. And I'm telling you, what is what happens in right atrial enlargement, right? When this is enlarged, then this is how it distorts it, and this is called P wave, right? And then when it is the left one, this is what it does to it. It increases duration, and this is how you get what is known as P mitrale. Now, P mitrale you will see in limbics, whether standard or augmented. But P mitrale has an unusual manifestation in the precordial leads, specifically in lead 1. You see, sometimes the P wave can be biphasic in lead P1, biphasic. Under normal circumstances, this negative segment of the biphasic P wave is usually less than one small box. Small box. When in fact it's more than one small box, you need to go back and look at lead 2 and lead AVR to make sure you're not missing a P mitrale. Okay? So that is what this is telling you over here. All right? Now let me ask you something. What if you now find an EKG and you're looking at the P wave, and the P wave is tall and wide at the same time? What's going on? How would you interpret that? If the P wave, we said the P wave is tall, that is P pulmonale. If it is wide, it's P mitrale. What if it's both? If it is tall and wide, that means biatrial enlargement. Both atria are enlarged, right? So that's what you find in somebody, a hypertensive smoker with history of COPD. Because of his hypertension, he has left ventricular hypertrophy and left atrial enlargement. Because he smoked and he has COPD, he has a right atrial enlargement. So he will have, if the EKG will show both tall and wide P waves. You got that? Excellent.
Dr. Martin.
Dr. Martins,
Yeah.
can you please repeat about the biphasic P wave?
In V1, P wave can be biphasic. It will look like an S. It's not an abnormality, it's normal. But whenever there is a left atrial enlargement, that negative portion of it will be more than one small box. It will be deeper than it should be. That's what I'm saying here. Right here? This is normal. That you expect this sometimes, a biphasic P wave in V1 usually. It's called biphasic or diphasic because not matter. What is important is that this negative section is usually less than a little box. When it's more than one box, you need to go back. Make sure you're not missing P mitrale in the other leads. Okay? Are you with me? Excellent. So let's go. Now we're going to go talk about something very interesting, which is the bundle branch block. So in order for you to understand bundle branch block, let me go through this first over here. Remember the bundle of keys, right? You have the SA node, you have the NV node, bundle of leaves, right bundle, left bundle, ventricles. Right? That's very artistic. You know, like Elisa, right? You don't compliment it, you compliment yourself. Okay, so supposing we have a V1 over here, right? And we have V6, right? Let's assume that there is a right bundle branch block. If there is a right bundle branch block, that means the impulses will come down here, right? I remember I told you that the first part of the ventricle that gets depolarized is the septum, right? And because it's the right one that is blocked, the impulse will go from here to here, right? Right? How would B1 see that impulse? This is the ventricle we're talking about, right? You will see there's an arrow, right? Then, what will happen next? The left ventricle over here will get depolarized. Right? How would B1 see that? You will see it as going away from it, right? So you will see it as negative, right? Then when the left ventricle is done, the impulse will now spread to depolarize the right ventricle. Then the B1 will see it as this, right? You understand that, right? This pattern here is what we call the R prime pattern. R prime, yes. Okay, this R prime, or some people call it RSR. Okay, in B1, you see that? So whenever there is a right bundle branch block, in B1 you will see RSR pattern. And you will see the exact opposite in B6. It will look like this. But sometimes it will be merged and it will be like that. When it is like this, it's the opposite of the RS prime. We don't call it. When it is like this, we call it the QS inversion because it reflects a merger of the Q and the S. Okay? Okay, are you all with me so far? Right? Whenever there is a right bundle branch block, you will get an RR prime in B1, you will get a QS in B6. Right? Are you all with me? Is there anyone in this class that is not clear? Good. Now let's flip the script. Supposing the problem is on the left. So the problem is now this is the one that is blocked. Right? This is the one that is blocked, right? So what happens? The septal depolarization occurs now from this side, right? Because the left bundle is blocked, right? It goes the opposite direction, right? So B1 will record it as going away from it, right? So it will be negative. This, oh, don't do that. Well, this is my birthday gift. Okay. B6 will record it as a positive wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going in that direction, right? Remember, this is the one that is going. Then the impulse will now spread and depolarize the right ventricle, right? And now, you will now see it as going up from that negative position, right? Whereas B6 will see it as going away from it, right? So it will come down. When right ventricle is now done, the impulse will now go over now to depolarize the left ventricle. B1 will now see it as going away from it, right? Because it's going away, right? And this will see it as coming towards it. Do you see what I'm trying to explain to you here? Now you still have the RSR, but only this time it will be in V6. And the QX will be in V1. So whenever there is a bundle branch block, you always have RSR pattern. RSR pattern simply means there is a bundle branch block. It doesn't tell you where the bundle branch block is. You now have to look at the precordial chest lead. If the RSR is in V1 or V2 and is complemented by a QS deflection in V5 and V6, then you know you're dealing with a right bundle branch block. But if the RSR is in V5 or V6 and the complementary QS deflection is in V1 and V2, you know you're dealing with a left bundle branch block. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. Don't get confused. RSR is simply a pattern. It tells you there is bundle branch block. In order for you to determine whether it's a right bundle or a left bundle, you have to look at the precordial chest leads. If it is predominantly V1 and V2, those are right-sided chest leads. So that means a right bundle branch block. If they are on the left, V5 and V6, then it's the left bundle branch block. Okay, my next couple of slides make that very clear to you. All right, so bundle branch block interferes with the simultaneous depolarization, yada yada yada. So the consequent sequential depolarization prolongs the QRS duration. Because of that weird depolarization pattern, QRS duration is usually prolonged, right? Because instead of the right and left getting depolarized at the same time, one has to wait for one to finish. So the duration tends to be longer. So generally speaking, when there is bundle branch block, QRS durations are longer, right? So, you write too much, man. Sometimes just listen. Listen to the slide. There is nothing I'm saying. I'm just explaining what is on the slide. When you see RSR, and the QRS duration is not prolonged, but there is RSR, that is what is called an incomplete bundle branch block. So if you have RSR in V1 and V2, and the QRS duration is not prolonged, you say this is an incomplete right bundle branch block. Okay? If you see an RSR in V5 and V6, and the QRS duration is not prolonged, you say this is an incomplete left bundle branch block. What if you see prolonged QRS duration, but you don't see RSR? Then you cannot say there's a bundle branch block. You just know that there is a block somewhere inside the ventricle. So you call it intraventricular conduction defect. You see, this is a definition of terms. It's extremely important that you understand it. When there is a bundle branch block, usually QRS duration will prolong, and you will see an RSR or RR prime pattern. That is usually, but nothing is usual about human beings. We are the weirdest being on the planet. So there are times you will see the RSR, but the QRS duration will be normal. You describe that as incomplete bundle branch block. And there are times you see prolonged QRS duration, but you don't see RSR. So you cannot say it's right or left bundle branch. You can only say there is an intraventricular conduction defect. Okay? Excellent. All right, so loss. I'll give you guys a break in about 10 minutes. Loss. So, do you see anything here? Well, I mean, it's obvious, right? It's right bundle branch block. Why? Tell me why, though.
Because there is RR prime in V1.
Good. and there is a QS.
QS deflection in
B6.
B6.
Right? See this weird thing down here? It's a QS. Right? All right. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is a right bundle branch block because there is an RR prime pattern in B1 and B2 plus QRS duration is prolonged. So a more complete description would be complete right bundle branch block. Right? And what are some of the causes? Coronary artery disease, myocarditis, pulmonary embolism, atrial septal defect. Right? What type of atrial septal defect will give you right bundle branch block? Tolu? The ostium premium type.
Premium, yeah.
Right? Okay.
Um,
Okay. All right. Look at this one.
wait, wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said there's an RR prime, and then what was the other thing that you said after about the?
Say it again.
You said there's an RR prime, which I see here.
QS.
And then what was the other?
QS.
Okay. Where's that?
Right here in
Oh.
B6. Usually, if there is RR prime in the right side, you will see a QS in the left side. If there is an RR prime on the left side, you will see QS on the right side. The Q wave will be abnormal, it will be wide down here. You see, under normal circumstances, QRS is supposed to end like this. It's supposed to end not like this. It's not supposed to end like that. Right? That slurring of the S wave is what we call QS. Okay? You got it? This right here.
No, I see that. So is that the same thing in V5 as well? Is it?
Yeah, the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Remember, right-sided leads is B1, B2. Left-sided is B5, B6. Okay? Excellent.
Oh, wait, go back again. Is there a reason why V3 doesn't have that?
Because B3 is over the septum. It does not have a lesions or loyalty at any side. So we normally don't use B3 or B4. We use the B1 and B2, B5 and B6. Because B4 and B3, they straddle the septum. They have no adhesions. Okay, so they're not reliable.
Oh.
Can you point out at the prime on B1?
Yeah. The RR prime, this is, it just means double R.
Right.
This is the first one. The second one.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah, this R, the first R, in order to differentiate the first R from the second R, we put a prime on it. So that's why you call it RR prime. I was trained to call it RSR because it's really an R wave followed by an S followed by another R. Okay? But it doesn't matter how you want to call it. You can call it RR prime, you can call it RSR. Everybody will understand what you're talking about. It doesn't matter what you call it. Are you all good? Excellent. So now, Benny, so this is really left bundle branch block. But tell me why it is a left bundle branch block.
You see the RR in B6?
Do you really see RR in B6?
No, do you see QS?
Thank you. You see, it is not all the time that you will see the RR prime. Sometimes the RR prime will look like a peak. So you will see a wide QRS and it looks like a little peak on top of it. That is the RR prime. So when it doesn't look clear to you, you always verify with the opposite lead. You see, in this case, the RR prime is reduced to nothing but this peak-like appearance, right? But it is confirmed by this abnormal QS deflection over here. Okay, so you will call this on the EKG left bundle branch block, and it's a complete one because the QRS duration is prolonged. Right? You got that? Okay. And what are the causes of left bundle branch block? Hypertensive heart disease, coronary artery disease, Lyme disease, and dilated cardiomyopathy. Okay, this is EKG. I'm just giving you a list of differential diagnoses. I will never ask you on an EKG exam a pathology causing this. Now, I want you to recognize EKG pattern. Your exam will be an EKG pattern, not disease. In other exams, in cardiology, I will ask you this and I'll give you EKG, and the answers will be these ones. But on your EKG exam, I'm not going to ever ask you anything like this. I will always show you EKG and ask you to recommend, to identify patterns on that EKG. Okay, they're not simple, but by the time we're done in the summer, nothing will be complicated. Okay? Good. All right. So now, I'm going to talk about bifascicular blood. How do we recognize? Okay, this morning, let me recap before your break. This morning, I started by saying, if you see a right axis deviation and you see normal QRS, that means you have a left posterior hemiblock, right? And if you see a left axis deviation with a normal QRS duration, that means you have a left anterior hemiblock, right? Now let me ask you, if you see a right bundle branch block with a left axis deviation and normal QRS duration, what will that be? Because already you're seeing a right bundle branch block, and here you are seeing a left axis deviation and the QRS duration is normal. That means both the right bundle and the left anterior fascicle are blocked. Right? That is the definition of a bifascicular block. So in order for you to have a bifascicular block, you must have right bundle branch block. So when you have right bundle branch block plus a heavy block, then you have a bifascicular block. How does it present on EKG? On EKG, you would always have a right bundle branch block, like here. You see the RS pattern? See how distorted the RS arm thing is over here, right? So you have a RSR and you have a QS. That tells you there is a right bundle branch block here, right? But then you now look at the axis. Well, under normal circumstances, a right bundle branch block should give you what? A right axis deviation, right? If you look under the causes of right axis deviation, right bundle branch block is one of the first few ones, right? So a right bundle branch block should give you a right axis deviation. When you have a right bundle branch block with a left axis deviation and normal QRS duration, that's the bifascicular block. Right? Is it confusing? No, it's not confusing. No. I already taught you how to identify bundle branch block. You already know that. You will recognize RSR. Forget about all these crazy markings on that EKG. I don't know who the heck you guys. All you really need to pay attention is when you look at this EKG, you see the RSR in D1. It's not the typical one, but you can still see that there's an R here. There's an R here. The first R is very tiny. The second R is very huge. It doesn't look like co-equal like we've seen. But it is obvious there's an RSR here, right? So you will not miss this right bundle branch, right? Would you miss this? You probably would not. And if you follow arrows, remember I told you, no matter how simple the EKG looks, go arrows in your heart. If you did that, you will recognize that, well, this axis is not right. You don't expect a left axis deviation in somebody with right bundle branch block. You don't. Whenever you have left axis deviation in the presence of a right bundle branch, that means you have two blocks. Because remember, the official definition of left anterior hemiblock is left axis deviation and normal QRS duration. So when you now have the two together, is bifascicular block. So a bifascicular block is basically a right bundle branch block plus left posterior hemiblock or left anterior hemiblock. Okay? Now I think you're like totally saturated. I could begin to see the sediments in your brain. Go. 5 minutes. Interval. The Q wave is the first negative deflection after the PR interval. The R wave is the first positive deflection after the PR interval. Remember that. Q waves are normal in some leads, not in all leads. You can find a Q wave in lead 1, lead ADL, in B5 and B6. These are leads that embrace the septum. They look at the septum. So it's okay to see Q wave in them. Now you can understand that. So now we have to be able to tell a normal Q wave from an abnormal Q wave. Why do we need to do that? Because an abnormal Q wave means your patient has had a heart attack. You don't ever want to miss an abnormal Q wave. Okay? So Q waves are usually seen in some leads, right? They are not always abnormal. But when it is abnormal, it has some specific characteristics. Normal Q waves that are called physiological Q waves, they are usually no wider than one small box and no deeper than 2 small boxes. Okay? So normal Q waves, they are usually not wider than 1 small box and they are not deeper than 2 small boxes. Okay? And that is what, forget about that 25% crap. Just remember what I just told you. Okay? And sometimes you see them and you tell the patient to take a deep breath a couple of times and have the MA repeat the EKG, they disappear. Okay? You really have to know how to recognize normal Q waves because you don't want to call somebody, you don't want to tell somebody they have MI when they have not. Can you imagine you go to your doctor and you say, oh, I'm looking at the EKG, looks like you've had a heart attack before. You say, no, I've never had a heart attack before. Yes, the EKG shows me fine. Really? Had a heart attack? And you know there are truly silent MIs, right? They put the patient at a different risk level altogether. If that happens to be false, oh, that patient would never trust you again. Never. It does not matter. Even if they have long toenails and fingernails and telling them you need to clip your nose, they know they are fine. You have no idea what you're talking about. So you don't ever want to make that kind of mistake. Okay? That's how I'm going to make sure that you guys understand how to recognize pathologic Q wave from normal Q wave. Look at this EKG. Tell me where there are Q waves on this EKG. There are Q waves on Christian. Where? Show me where you see Q waves.
First negative deflection, so D1.
There is a Q wave in V1.
It's normal.
In lead 1.
Lead 1, sorry, that's on that.
Lead 1. There's a Q wave there. Oh yes, who said that? Who said there's a Q wave in V1? In 1. Okay, so where else is it? Where else do you see Q waves? People in 2, yes. Where else? Where? B4. Okay, where else?
ABF.
ABF. Yes. Where else?
B5.
B5. Yes. B6. Yes. Where else? In 3. Right? So you see all these Q waves. Are they all abnormal? Now tell me, I want one brave soul, a lioness or a lion, to tell me Which of these Q waves is abnormal? I'm looking for a volunteer. Just raise your right hand and let's see if you can identify which of the Q waves are abnormal. Oh my goodness, I have 3 lines in it. Now, brave group. All right, so let's go with Benny. So, Benny. So, which one do you think is abnormal?
3.
Thank you. This Q wave in 3 is deeper than 2 small boxes and is definitely wider than a small box. So, there is a pathologic Q wave here. Where is it abnormal? What do you think in AVF? Is it abnormal or abnormal? Let's see abnormal. Is it normal or abnormal? Do you think the Q wave in AVF is normal? No, it's not. It's not. So it's abnormal in 3. It's abnormal in AVF. Where else is it abnormal? Where else?
Abnormal or normal?
Abnormal. It's abnormal in AVF because look, this is 2 small boxes. There's a third box above that Q wave there. Many of you are reading from this small thing that you printed. You'll never be able to see the small boxes. So blow this stuff up and so you can see it. But Billy is right. It's abnormal in 3 and it's abnormal in AVF.
Can you point at it in 3? Where, like,
My goodness,
like,
look, this is
3 boxes
it.
down, right? So, okay.
Huh?
AVF looks normal.
AVF looks, I'll give it to you. I'm closer to the board, so I can see differently from you, but I'll go with you. Yeah, it's normal. In exam, you will much therapy. But you all agree that 3 is abnormal, right?
Yeah.
Christian, we understand?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So if it is abnormal in 3, and then, believe me, it's abnormal in AVF.
It's 1.
No, AVL. You see a Q wave? I mean, it's there, but very tiny. It's a normal Q wave, right? So when you see a Q wave in lead 3, and with an eye of faith in AVF, you will say the patient has had an inferior MI, right? Inferior MI, because lead 3 and AVF and 2 are inferior leads, right? They look at the heart from the bottom, right? If you see the Q wave in B5 and B6, you say there is an old lateral MI, right? If you see it in B1 through B4, you say the patient has had an anterior MI. Q wave means the myocardium in that area is dead. It means infarction. Okay? So now you know. You identified Q waves on the EKG, and you have identified the pathologic ones. Because you recognize that a normal Q wave is not supposed to be more than 2 small squares in depth and no wider than 1 small square. Yes?
Oh, you said B5, B6 is lateral.
Lateral.
And then B1 through.
B4 is septal. Yeah, septal. Okay? Oh, don't worry. I'm just getting your feet wet with this. When we go to coronary artery disease after the spring break, we'll swim. And some great games.
I understand. It's all.
Okay.
She's waddling right now.
So remember, we talked about. So this is Q. We're done with waves, right? The only wave we have not talked about is the T wave. We'll talk about that later on. But I want to talk about the voltages. Because remember that when you're doing EKG, you're recording the voltages of the heart, right? So depending on the distance, the waves are traveling from the heart to the skin, the amplitude will be different. For instance, if you find a very skinny hypertensive woman with left ventricular hypertrophy, once you put the leads on your chest and you record the EKG, the waves will be all over themselves because the waves will be the amplitude will be very high. But if you have a morbidly obese patient with LVH and you record the EKG, the waves will be small because they have to go through this thick layer of fat. So it's important for us to have an idea of what the voltages should be in a normal EKG. So this is an estimate for you. Under normal circumstances, the waves should be between, in the limb leads, it should be between 1 big box and 3 big boxes. So if you look at the limb leads, the amplitude, the entire amplitude of the QRS should be between 1 big box and 3 big boxes in the limb leads. But in the precordial chest leads, it should be between 2 big boxes. What am I talking? Doesn't even make sense what I just said. Sorry. Oh, yeah, it makes sense. In the chest lead, it should be between 2 big boxes and 6 big boxes. Okay? That is what is normal. In the limb leads, it should be between 1 big box and 3 big boxes. In the chest leads, it should be between 2 big boxes and 6 big boxes. So if you understood what I just said, whenever you see an EKG and the entire QRS deflection is less than 1 big box in the limb lead or less than 2 big boxes in the chest lead, you have to call it EKG voltages are low. Okay? What to make it low? Morbid obesity. What is anasarca?
Fluid collection in the body. Fluid, when you have fluid.
Exactly. Fluid overload, massive edema all over from neck down. Anasarca. What is macromasia? Big breast. Emphysema. Pericardial effusion. Constrictive pericarditis. Restrictive cardiomyopathy, especially following radiation therapy, amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, systemic sclerosis, carcinoid syndrome, endomyocardial fibrosis. All of these are causes of restrictive myocardiomyopathy. So just remember this one. Low voltages can be due to morbid obesity, anasarca, emphysema, pericardial effusion, yada yada. Okay? When you see voltages that are more than 3 big boxes in the limb lead and 6 big boxes in the chest lead, that is huge voltage. You have to say the voltages are high. When do you see that? Slim build, cachexia, extreme weight loss, regular exercise, acromegaly, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and ventricular hypertrophy. Are you with me? There are 2 ventricles, right and left. So when you see high voltage, you should think about ventricular hypertrophy. And because there's a right and there's a left ventricle, you also want to be able to tell when are you dealing with a right ventricular hypertrophy or a left ventricular hypertrophy. And you know why I put this here? Because I had this space and I wanted to explain something. Okay? Ventricular hypertrophy could be right could be from valvular disorders or vascular disorders like a pulmonary hypertension. It could be left, same thing, valvular disorders or vascular systemic hypertension. Just that is represent for that one.
Are you saying it could lead to
Increased voltage.
it could lead to those conditions or those are caused of
No, all I'm saying is ventricular hypertrophy can be on the right or on the left. When it's on the right, it could be caused by a valvular disorder or a vascular disorder. And left ventricular hypertrophy can be caused by a valvular disorder on the left side or a vascular disorder on the left side. And the examples I give you is pulmonary hypertension. Bottom line, ventricular hypertrophy is a cause of high voltage, Ventricular hypertrophy can be due to pulmonary hypertension on the right or systemic hypertension on the left. Got it?
What is the number of boxes?
Huh?
The high voltage? You were describing about the boxes.
I'm not following what you said.
Because you were describing how the PRS would look by the boxes.
Yeah.
Numbers. It's 3.
It's more than 6 boxes in the chest lead and more than 3 boxes in the limb leads. That's what is high. Okay? Now, whenever you see high voltages, ventricular hypertrophy is one of the causes. You don't want to miss that. Because left ventricular hypertrophy, for instance, is an independent risk factor for coronary artery disease. So you must identify it. And because it's important to identify it, we come up with very specific criteria for diagnosing right ventricular hypertrophy or left ventricular hypertrophy. Okay? So it's not enough to say to somebody, EKG voltages are high. What does that mean? It does not even make sense. Whenever you see high voltages, you should be able to say there is a left ventricular hypertrophy or there is a right ventricular hypertrophy. It's not just enough to say voltages are high. You must explain why the voltages are high. Okay? I'm going to teach you now, how do you tell when it's a right ventricular hypertrophy or a left ventricular hypertrophy? Let me ask you a question first. Under normal circumstances, is R wave greater than S in V1? Bradley? Want some coffee, man?
No, I'm good.
Is R wave greater than S in V1?
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. R is shortest in V1 under normal circumstances. If you look at an EKG and all of a sudden the R is better than S in V1, that's a right ventricular hypertrophy criteria right there. Under normal circumstances, your R should be greater than S in V6. Right? Remember, the tallest R is supposed to be in V6. If you look at V6 and your R is less than S, that is a criteria for right ventricular hypertrophy. And finally, if you add the R in V1 to the S in V6, and you get more than 2 big boxes, your patient has right ventricular hypertrophy. Okay? These criteria are extremely important because I will give you cases of EKG, all these things, and you must know. Remember, you don't need all of it, you only need one. And because EKG is so crazy, you have to know all 3 of them because they are not always present together. All you need to call it is one criterion. Okay, but you have 3 you must look for. Right? And if you understand everything I've been telling you about EKG, this is not a big deal. We've been talking about R wave progression all month long. Right? Where you say, well, it goes from predominantly negative in V1 to predominantly positive in V6. So basically, we said that R wave is shortest in V1 and tallest in V6. I'm telling you now that if you don't see those criteria, think about right ventricular hypertrophy. That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing. I'm repeating myself. I'm only giving it different spins and different wraps. It's the same candy. How do you diagnose left ventricular hypertrophy? Any R in augmented limb lead more than 3, or any R in the standard limb lead more than 4, or any R in the chest lead more than 5. Big boxes. Or if you add the S in V1 to the R in V5 or V6, and you get a sum of 35 millimeters, 7 big boxes, your patient has left ventricular hypertrophy. I can't simplify this, you just have to know it. Okay? It gets even more complicated. when you pick up textbooks, right? When you pick up textbooks, this is my simplest line, so don't worry about it. Because I'm going to dismiss it in 10 seconds. When you pick up textbooks, usually those textbooks are written by cardiologists, and everybody wants to shine. They want their name after something. And they come up with all kind of criteria that you can use to diagnose left ventricular hypertrophy. There is a criteria from Cornell. There is a criteria from Sokolov-Lyon. There is Rumfield-Estes. And they are so like detailed and different. And you try to memorize this, you will end up with a migraine. Before you even try to memorize this, see how useful they are. Look at the specificity and sensitivity. You know what sensitivity means, right? That means Cornell is present 23% of the time. That means if you rely on Cornell criteria, you will miss 3 out of every 4 patients you see. Is that a useful test? Why is it even in books? Because we have these egomaniacal windbags that will not just keep quiet. If it's not working, dump it. Right? So I'm giving you this just to tell you, if anybody bothers you about this in practice, tell them they're absolutely unreliable. I don't use them. So how could you say that? Say Dr. Martin says so. All right. I give you this. I give you the reference. If anybody gives you trouble, say they are useless. Okay. Yeah, when you see them, they are specific, but you have to see them first. Right? And Cornell is a great, good place, but unfortunately, it never looked too good at this point. All right. So let's take a look at this. This is where EKG gets complicated. Whenever there is bundle branch block and there is ventricular hypertrophy, you have to be very careful if you have bundle branch block pattern with the same EKG. Are you with me? What I'm trying to say to you is that it is difficult to determine axis and ventricular hypertrophy whenever there is a bundle branch block. So when there is a bundle branch block, be careful how you call axis deviation or hypertrophy. That's what I'm saying. All right? So, whenever there is a bundle branch block, you will describe the EKG as there is a possible axis deviation and maybe a ventricular hypertrophy. Okay? Why is that important? Because anytime there is bundle branch block, the voltages don't truly reflect the voltage of the myocardium. Because remember, the normal voltage of the myocardium is based on simultaneous concurrent depolarization of the ventricles. When the depolarization is now sequential instead of simultaneous, it distorts the configuration. Right? So whenever there is bundle branch block, you slow down. You don't call axis deviation and hypertrophy confidence, because what you are looking at might be an illusion coming from the bundle branch block. Okay? Okay, so this is a normal T wave. Now we are going to talk about T wave. T wave reflects ventricular repolarization, like I said. It is expected to be in the opposite direction to the QRS complex, because remember, if QRS represents ventricular depolarization, right? And T wave represents ventricular repolarization. They should travel in opposite direction. So you expect the T wave to be in opposite direction of the QRS, but it's not. T wave is in the same direction as the QRS. The reason is because of the way the ventricles repolarize. The ventricles, they repolarize from the apex to the base in the opposite direction. So the depolarization and the repolarization occur in the same direction instead of opposite direction. So that kind of flipped the wave. That is why T wave is not in the opposite direction, but in the same direction. If you can understand what I just said, good. If you can't understand it, just know that T waves are expected in the opposite direction, but they're not. On a normal EKG, they are in the same direction as the QRS. The only time they reflect their true position is when there is a bundle branch block. Okay? Because when there is a bundle branch block, that repolarization sequence is also distorted. So T wave, anytime you see bundle branch block, T wave is always in the opposite direction of the QRS. That is normal. That normal T wave inversion that you get with bundle branch block is what we call appropriate T wave discordance. So, I'll tell you why we have to call it a special name in a couple of minutes. T wave abnormality, they're extremely important. So look at the T wave, D1. See that T wave over there? It's a T wave, but it's very flat, right? Look at this T wave, it's flipped. But it's flipped in a different way than this T wave, right? This T wave is very tall and big. These are very precise appearances of T wave that you must know like the back of your hand. You can't even get confused about it. Whenever you see tall, big T wave like this, your patient has hyperkalemia. Why is that important? Sometimes you have patients that have hyperkalemia, and you draw the blood and send it to the lab. It takes 36 hours. If you are concerned about hyperkalemia, do an EKG. EKG in 15 minutes will tell you whether or not this patient has a dangerous hyperkalemia or not. Because you will see tall, big T wave on the EKG equals hyperkalemia. When you see short, flat T wave, it means hypokalemia. Okay? So you see your patient on a routine follow-up, or a new patient is coming to you, hypertensive, taking Maxide and atenolol, and on your routine EKG showed low, flat T wave. Better draw that patient's potassium or tell them, can you drink a glass of orange juice every day until I see you again while I'm waiting for your potassium, because you suspect that potassium is low with that low T wave. Okay? Now, when there is T wave inversion, there are two types of T wave inversion. There is symmetrical and asymmetrical. What does that really mean? Symmetrical means that the T wave is inverted in such a way that when you draw a line through the inversion, you can bisect the T wave into two identical halves. So this is a T wave that is inverted. If I draw a line through this T wave, that's a good line. If I draw a line through this T wave, I can break it into two equal identical halves. If I can do that, this T wave inversion is called symmetrical. But if the T wave is inverted in such a way that I cannot technically divide it into two equal halves, it's called asymmetrical. Why do we care? Because when the T wave inversion is asymmetrical as in 3, that is usually what we call a strain pattern. That means the ventricle is enlarged and is struggling with vaporization. Strain, that is not a problem. Sorry. Right? That's so this is what you call a strain pattern. But when you see this symmetrical two-wave inversion, that is trouble. Okay? Trouble. Because that generally means ischemia. And remember, how do people get heart attack? First, the EKG will show ischemia. Then the EKG will show injury. Then the EKG will show infarction. If you can identify ischemia, you will prevent injury, and the patient will not have a heart attack. If you miss ischemia, then your patient will suffer injury. That myocardium will never recover and will lead to infarction. Kara, you have a question?
Yeah, so T-wave for hyper and hypokalemia, they're not inverted, they're just...
They're tall and flat,
Okay.
yeah. Okay? There is something I'm going to tell you about hyperkalemia. The very first EKG change in somebody with hyperkalemia is tall, thick T-wave. That's the first thing that happens. It happens whenever serum potassium is more than 6. When the serum potassium goes to 7.5, the QRS duration prolongs. When the potassium goes above 9, your QRS merges with your T wave and form what is called a sine wave. That is signal of death. That patient is going to die. You don't do something. Yes.
But on the last slide, shouldn't it be hyperkalemia should be the number 4 on the last?
I didn't even
They don't
thought.
match it.
Oh, they don't match up?
They don't match it. You have to like.
It's a test. It's supposed to be a class test, but I'm running out of time.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But that's not
I mean, I just put the number here, and the idea is for you guys to match it. Right? But I'm running out of time. It's a sequence of things. But this is important. So, many times you will hear hyperkalemia on EKG sine wave. Sine wave is not an early sign. It's a late sign. The first sign, the earliest sign of hyperkalemia on EKG is tall peak T wave. The next sign is QRS duration prolongation. And finally, the QRS and the T wave they merge, and it forms a sine wave, and the P wave disappears. And that patient will be dead in a matter of days if you don't do something. If nobody fixes it then. Okay. The other one I want to tell you is when potassium is low, and the T wave gets depressed, there is another wave on the EKG that I've not talked about. It's called the U wave. It comes after T wave. It represents the repolarization of the Purkinje fibers. It is not usually visible. So many EKGs, you won't see it. Many EKG textbooks don't talk about it. But when you have hypokalemia and the amplitude of normal T wave is suppressed, those U wave, they become prominent, right? And so in an exam, prominent U wave is an electrocardiographic manifestation of hypokalemia. Got that? Hypokalemia. Because hypokalemia flattens the T wave, remember that. Okay? And then makes the U wave become more prominent. All right. So now we've done, that is the end of the waves. Are you want some water? Okay. So, I'm done with waves. We've done axons, we've done rate, we've done rhythm, we've done orientation, we've done waves. And under waves, we talk about P wave, the QRS, and the T wave. Now let's talk about intervals and segments. All right, so PR interval between the P and the beginning of the P. I want you to remember, the segment does not include the wave. The interval includes the wave. Please don't forget that. And under normal circumstances, everything from the PR interval is to fit within one big box. Okay, you see the duration? 0.12 to 0.20. That is how it should be. Okay, under normal circumstances. And the QT segment and the QT interval is measured like that. And I already told you the QT is two big boxes. All right? There is one thing I want you to remember. PR interval is depressed in patient with acute pericarditis. Just hang on to it. We'll use it later. Just hang on to that piece of information. When PR interval is prolonged, that is what is called first degree outflow. When PR interval is shortened, that is what is called accelerated conduction. Because remember, PR interval represents the amount of time it takes for the AV node to receive the impulse from the SA node and send it to the ventricle. If there's a problem with that process, the AV node, you will see it as a prolonged PR interval. Short PR interval. Why would the PR interval be short? The PR interval will be short whenever the impulse is going through a shortcut. Okay? Whenever the impulse is not traveling through the normal route, the AV node route, the PR interval will be shorter than 3 small boxes. There are 2 shortcuts. One is called the bundle of Kent. Bundle of Kent is an abnormal communication, electrical communication, between the atria and the ventricle outside of the AV node. So what bundle of Kent does is it takes atrial impulses. Just stop writing and listen. Bundle of Kent takes atrial impulses and delivers it directly to the ventricle. And whenever the ventricles receive electrical impulse, they don't know what to do with it. So whenever you see, and that confusion of the ventricle when they receive electrical impulse directly from the atrium is usually signaled by the slurring of the QRS. That slurring of the QRS is called a delta wave. So whenever the bundle of Kent is an abnormal communication between the atria and the ventricle, the ventricles are not supposed to receive electrical impulses from the atria. They're supposed to get it through the bundle branches and the Purkinje fibers. They are used to that. So whenever they get it directly from the atria through this abnormal bundle of Kent, they don't know what to do. And that initial confusion results in a slurring of the QRS at the beginning, and that slurring is called the delta wave. The second shortcut is James bundle. James bundle is actually an internodal tract. You remember the internodal tracts, the anterior, posterior, and the middle? Under normal circumstances, they're supposed to take the impulses from the SA node to the AV node. They condense on the AV node. But sometimes an internodal tract will pass the AV node and insert itself into a bundle of these. Whenever that happens, that abnormal internodal tract is called James bundle. So, again, that is the second shortcut. So there are 2 shortcuts that can result into shortened PR interval. Bundle of Kent, and whenever you have bundle of Kent, we call it Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. Those are the 3 folks that discovered this. And when it is James bundle, it is called Langanon-Levin, LGL, or WPW. Okay? All right? So these are the two causes primarily of short PR interval. Okay? You all good with me? Okay. Excellent. So look at this EKG right here. Kara. When you see a long PR interval, look at it. This is a P wave. See how long it's taking from this impulse to travel to the ventricle. It's supposed to be 1 box. It's almost more than 2 boxes here. But every P wave gets conducted, right? There are no unconducted P waves. That is why it is called a first degree AV block. In other words, the conduction is getting through slowly, but everything is getting through. When you begin to drop some of the atrial impulses, you are already in what is now called second degree. Second degree means there are excess P wave. That means there are impulses that are not getting through. And there are 2 types of second degree. There is the Wenke back, second degree, and there is the Mobius, second degree. I didn't talk about that here because we're going to talk more about it. But I want to talk about Wenke back because repetition helps you remember. You see, in Wenke back, the PR interval prolongs, indicating increasing difficulty with the conduction until finally the AV node fails. So you see an impulse right here. This is a normally conducted P wave. PR interval is long, but it got through. Then this one came. Well, it took a lot longer for this one to get through, right? See how long it took for this one to get through. This is the PR interval. And it gets really bad here. And finally, it failed. It didn't go through. When you have increasing PR duration prolongation before you drop the P, that prolongs, increasing prolongation of PR interval is what is called Wenke back phenomenon. It is usually found in type 1 second degree AV block. When you have unconducted P wave without a preceding prolongation of the PR interval, it's called Mobius type second degree AV block or type 2. We'll talk about that later. Okay? Okay, and if you just find excess P wave that are not working, they are atrial is doing its own thing, the ventricles are doing their own thing, the P waves are not related to the QRS. That's what is called the third degree AV block. Okay? When you look at this EKG, how do you know it's a third degree AV block? Because the first thing you notice is that PR intervals are crazy, they are long and short, right? But then you look at it again closely, they are not really related. Because in Wenke back, they are progressively getting longer and longer and longer. But in AV dissociation, long, short, long, and then unconducted. The way you know it is you just take a piece of paper, and I will teach you that later on. You take a piece of paper and you mark the P waves, and you match that paper through the EKG script, and you find out that the P waves are constant on their own, and the QRSs are constant on their own. That means the ventricles and the atria are not working together. And that is why a third degree heart block is also called atrioventricular dissociation. Okay? So now I want to talk about ST segment abnormality. So segments, so I just talked about intervals, about the segments. ST segment. We talk about ST segment as elevated or depressed. In in order for you to describe something as elevated or depressed, you need a reference point, right? The reference point is the PR interval. So when we say ST segment is elevated or depressed, it is usually relative to the PR segment. So the PR is the baseline. Okay? ST segment elevation looks like this. ST segment depression looks like that. What does it mean? These are the causes of it. When people are living acute pericarditis, Brugada syndrome are the three main causes of it. And I also now give you, how can you tell them apart? If you see ST segment elevation, and you find Q wave on the same EKG, the patient has ventricular aneurysm. If you see ST segment elevation, and you see PR segment depression on the same EKG, then your patient has acute pericarditis. If you see ST segment elevation, and you have a right bundle branch block, look for Brugada. Okay? You look tired, and I'm feeling like I should stop, but I have like a couple of more slides, right?
Yeah, it's just two.
Okay, I can talk about this. Under normal circumstances, when you have myocardial injury, you get ST segment elevation. But when the injury is subendocardial, in other words, just underneath the endocardium, you don't get ST segment elevation, you get ST segment depression. That is an exception to the rule that I want you to remember. Don't forget it. ST segment elevation generally means myocardial injury. ST segment depressions generally mean myocardial ischemia, except in subendocardial injury. So you can have ST segment depression in ischemia or subendocardial injury. How would you tell the difference? The patient with subendocardial injury has chest pain going on right now, whereas the one with ischemia does not have chest pain or may not have chest pain. Okay? You understand the difference between ischemia, injury, and infarction? I already explained that to you. Ischemia means blood supply to this organ is compromised. If the patient is not moving, they'll be fine. But when they move, they'll get chest pain because then the insufficient blood flow will show. Injury means that the blood supply to the organ, to the heart is compromised. Cells are dying right now. They are getting injured right now, not dying. Then if that injury goes on for a long time and the cells begin to die, then you have QA. That is infarction. So ST segment depression means ischemia or subendocardial injury. ST segment elevation means injury, and QA means infarction. Okay? Just these are definitions of terms. Well, by the time we finish talking about this, you guys will be surprised. Everything is so easy. QT interval is prolonged whenever the QT interval is more than 2 big boxes, and is short when it is more than, I would say 1 box, but this is 0.3 seconds. But short QT is so rare. I'm just mentioning it to complete the books. Short QT syndrome is actually a syndrome, believe it or not. I've never seen it. And I've been in medicine 26 years. Okay. So what is the probability that you will see it? I don't know. Imagine the lucky one. Short QT syndrome is an autosomal dominant genetic disorder. Why do we care about it? Because you have to screen for it. If you see it, you will save the patient's life because it predisposes to fatal ventricular arrhythmias. So now, long QT, you will see. Long QT syndrome long QT can be congenital as a long QT syndrome, but more often than not, you will be the one that will cause it. You will cause it with the medications you will give your patients. After stroke, patients get long QT. In cardiovascular disease, they get long QT. In hepatorenal impairment, they get long QT. Electrolyte imbalance, they get long QT. Severe hypothyroidism, they get long QT. And medications, they get long QT. Look at the list of medications that will prolong QT interval. You will use one or more of these in practice, right? Haloperidol, we give it to patients to sleep. Thank God, Cisapride is no longer available. But look at sumatriptan, you will give it for migraine, right? Look at erythromycin, right? Look at Cipro. This is levoflox, ketoconazole, itraconazole, erythromycin. All of these medications will prolong QT, and they will predispose to Torsades de Pointes. Torsades de Pointes. Let me write it for you. It is abbreviated as TDP over there, but it is actually Torsades. Torsades de Pointes. It's a French word. It's a kind of particular reading where the QRS complex becomes like this. And the reason it's called Torsades de Pointes is like the QRS, you don't see period anymore. Only the QRS, they look crazy like this, and they look like they're twisting at the point. Okay. That twisting at the point, that narrowing and widening is twisting. It looks like, it gives you the impression of the QRS twisting at the point. And that is why it is called Torsades de Pointes. It's like twisting at the point. Okay? Why do we worry about QT prolongation? It predisposes to fatal ventricular dysrhythmia. And that fatal ventricular dysrhythmia is specifically Torsades de Pointes. Okay, now, let me tell you how well you've done today. Have you seen that EKG book? You've not seen the EKG yellow book?
Yeah.
You've seen it, right? You just went through it in 2 hours, in 3 hours. That big book. I've given you a lot of information this morning, and you survived it. You should clap yourself. Because, I mean, I know I was drowning you, but I knew you could take it. So if you're tired, you deserve to be. I've given you a lot of information. What I want you to do is go through it. Don't try to remember it. Just understand it. When we do summary, you will remember it by application. It's going to be fun because I have like 1,000 EKGs that we'll go through. And you will do one by one. Each of you will go through about 10, 20 as we go through the class. So the practice will just, at the end of the day, my goodness, EKG will be coming out of your nose. You'll be so sick of it. So don't bother your head now trying to remember, oh, it's supposed to be 2 small square feet for LV8, drum S2s, all those crap. Don't worry about that. With practice, you will get it. You will come so passively. You don't need to be so active about it. Practice will make it so passive. And then in practice, you will see EKG every single day of your life in practice. So there is no forgetting EKG. The beautiful thing is that the machine will interpret it. You would not wonder, why am I wasting everybody's time going through all this? Because you don't want to know anything. You do not, well, how do I say this? You don't want to be ignorant of anything a machine can be knowledgeable of. Because those machines, they can make mistakes. And the manufacturers will always put a disclaimer. The provider has the final say. You know how they say, like, I want to give those, they advertise Viagra on the TV. And they say, if you have an erection lasting 4 hours, call your physician. What am I supposed to do? If my patient has an erection lasting more than 4 hours and they call me, what am I supposed to do? Seriously, Kara? Okay, what would you do? The patient calls you, you say, I took Viagra, I can't get it to go down. It's been 6 hours. What would you do? Huh?
Pop it.
Wait, bro.
I said that last time, that was not right.
What would you do?
Tell him to go to ER.
Ice water.
Thank you. Tell him, stick it in the freezer. Now you put it in the ice water.
It's no sanitary.
Ice like constriction, and then you go. All right, have a good day. I think there's a holiday coming. It's not next Monday.
He really went to hell.
Any